Continuation of the resistance. Cato claimed that he had pacified Hispania, yet the year after he went back to Rome, there were more serious rebellions. Thus, the reality of the ground was different, and due to Hispania being far away, the Senate could be badly informed about the situation there. Cato's actions sowed the seeds of further rebellion. His heavy-handedness was resented. Moreover, he further promoted agricultural production to supply the Roman army. This transformed some of the tribes in the Roman territories from pastoral to nomadic or semi-nomadic societies into settled agricultural ones. Many young people who lost their traditional warrior lifestyle became mercenaries, auxiliary soldiers for the Roman army, bandits, or rebels. Outside Roman territory, there were fears about a possible Roman encroachment inland. This was fertile ground for the rebellions. In 194 BC, the praetors Publius Cornelius Scipio Nasidia and Sextus Digitus were assigned Hispania Ulterior and Praetor respectively. Sextus Digitus fought battles numerous rather than memorable with the tribes who had, in great numbers, revolted after the departure of Marcus Cato. He lost half of his army. All of Hispania would have rebelled had not Scipio Nicaea won many battles south of the river Ebro, resulting in the surrender of 50 towns. He fell upon a large gang of Lusitanian bandits who were on their way back home from plundering Hispania Ulterior, carrying their booty. This was near the city of Ilipa. His fresh and compact force fought against a long column that was hindered by many pack animals and was tired from a long march. At first, the Lusitanians threw the Romans into confusion. Then the battle became more even, and eventually the Romans won and pursued the fugitives. Lusitanians lost 12,000 men, and 140 men, mainly cavalrymen, were captured. The Romans lost 73 men. In 193 BC, the praetors Gaius Flaminius and Marcus Fulvius Nobilitor were assigned Hispania, Praetor, and Ulterior respective. Gaius Flaminius was a veteran who had fought in Hispania during the Second Punic War. Because of the events in the previous year, some friends told Gaius Flaminius and the Great War had flared up in Hispania. He had little confidence in the troops of Sextus Digitus and asked that the Senate to give him a legion from Rome to supplement the scared remnant of this army in addition to the force he had already allowed to levy. This would be given him a total of 6,200 infantry and 300 cavalry, which he thought sufficient to carry on the campaign. The Senate refused, saying that it could not pass the decrees based on rumors invented by the private individuals to gratify officials. It would accept only reports from the officers in Hispania. It added that in case of an emergency in Hispania, he would raise emergency troops outside Italy. Gaius Flaminius sailed to Sicily to conduct a levy. Then on his way to Hispania, a storm carried him to Africa and recruited veterans who had settled there after the Second Punic War. He added a contingent in Hispania to the two from Sicily and Africa. When he arrived in Hispania, he found that the report had been an exaggeration. For unknown reasons, he seized an Oriente city of Includia. The Oriente lived in today's region of La Mancha in south-central Spain, and the eastern part of Sierra Morena, outside the Roman territory. He then took his troops to the winter stations. During the winter, he fought several battles against raiding parties of the brigades. Livy thought that they were unworthy of record and that Marcus Fulvius did greater things. Marcus Fulvius Nobilitor undertook a campaign against an alliance of Vence from the northwest center of Hispania, Vetones from the west-central Hispania, and Celtiberians near the totem Toledo in central Hispania, which was 200 kilometers, 125 miles north of his province. He must have left Betis Valley and crossed the Sierra Morena. He routed his armies of these tribes and captured alive Hermanus. Livy said that he was their king. However, it is highly unlikely that these three peoples had a common king. In 192, Marcus Baebus Thermillus and Ulpius Atilius Serranus were assigned Hispania, Crater, and Ulter respectively. However, they were reassigned the command of Bertum and the fleet of the Greeks respectively. Gaius Flaminius and Marcus Fulvius Nobilitor retained their post. The two praetors fought in the right praetorial order. Gaius Flaminius took the wealthy Vacae city of Licarum by storm and captured the chief Conbrillo alive. Fulvius Nobilitor won 2 battles and seized the towns of Viscili and Hello from many forts, which others surrendered voluntarily. He then marched on the Oritani and seized Noblina and Cubilis. Several other towns surrendered. After this, he then advanced to River Tagus and attacked Totilim, which is now Toledo. The Vetones sent a large army to relieve it, and he routed them and captured the city. In 191 BC, the term Gaius Flavinus was extended, and Lucius Aemilius Paulus replaced Marcus Fulvius Nobilitor in Hispania Ulterior. The two praetors were to serve for 2 years because the war in Greece against Antonicus III had begun. They were allowed to have additional fresh troops, 3,000 infantry and 300 cavalry, and 2/3 of these were to be Latin allies. Lucius Aemilius lost a battle against Lusitanius in the territory of Vestani in the town of Lycon. He found it difficult to defend the camp and lost 6,000 men. He retreated by force to march to a friendly country. He raised an army by a hasty levy and fought a pitched battle against the Lusitanians. They were routed. They lost 18,000 men and 3,300 were captured. This made matters more tranquil in Hispania. We know through an inscription that Lucius Aemilius besieged the city of Hasta. Facing stiff resistance, he encouraged a revolt of the slaves of the city, decreeing that they would be freed and given the land they had worked on if they revolted. It worked. The city was delivered to him, and he kept his promise. We know this through an inscription found near Alca della Colazella, 80 kilometers east of Cadiz. In 189 BC, Publius Junius Brutus and Lucius Plautius Hypasus were the praetors of Hispania Ulter and Crater respectively. Publius Leonis was reassigned from Etruria to Hispania when Lucius Baebius died in Massilia, Marseille, on his way to Hispania when he was attacked by Ligurians. Lucius Baebius had been given reinforcements of 6,000 Latin infantry and 200 cavalry. Lucius Plautius Hypasus had been given 2,000 Roman and 2,000 Latin infantry and 200 cavalry. The two men were surprised to find the situation quiet in Hispania. Lucius Aemilius thought victory brought temporary peace. In 188 BC, Lucius Manilius Acidinius Flavinus and Gaius Antonius were the praetors of Hispania Crater and Ulter respectively. They were given more troops. 3,000 infantry and 200 cavalry were added to each provincial legion. Initially, things were quiet, but in 187 BC, the praetors informed Rome that the Celtiberians and Lusitanians were in arms and were ravaging the lands of the allies. Gaius Atinus fought the Lusitanians near Hasta, defeated them, killing 6,000 of them, and seized their camp. He then attacked Hasta, which he seized easily. However, he died in the battle. The Senate sent a messenger to order Gaius Calpurnius Piso, his successor, to hasten his departure. However, he had already left 2 days earlier. The other praetor, Lucius Manilius Acidinus, fought an indecisive battle against the Celtiberians. Both sides withdrew, and the Celtiberians moved their camp to the next night, giving the Romans the chance to bury their dead and collect the spoil. A few days later, the Celtiberians returned with a larger army and engaged the Romans near the town of Cagliaris, today's Calahorra in La Rioja, northern Hispania. They were defeated, suffering 12,000 casualties and 2,000 were captured. Livy noted that his sources did not explain why the Celtiberians, who had an enlarged army, were the weaker side. He also wrote that he had not the arrival of Acidius' successor prevented him taking advantage of his success. The Celtiberians might have been subdued. In 186 BC, the praetors Gaius Calpurnius Piso and Lucius Quintus Crispius were given reinforcements consisting of 20,000 Latin and 3,000 Roman infantry, and 800 Latin and 200 Roman cavalries. They conducted a common campaign. They joined their forces in Baetura and marched into Carpetania, where the enemy camp was. Between the towns of Dippo and Tolentum, a fight broke out between raging parties and developed into a full battle. Being familiar with the ground and knowing the enemy tactics, the enemy routed the Romans, who had lost 5,000 men. However, they did not keep up with the pressure. The praetors left their camp the following night. At dawn, the enemy approached the rampant and was surprised that it was empty. They remained in their camp for the next few days. Then they moved to the river Tagus. Meanwhile, the praetors, who had gathered auxiliaries from the allied Hispanic towns, encamped 12 miles from the river. They marched to the river banks at night. At dawn, they saw an enemy fort on a hilltop on the other side of the river. They found two fords, split the army into two, and crossed the river. The enemy watched them. They marveled at their sudden appearance and discussed how to throw them in confusion while they were crossing. Meanwhile, the Romans brought over all their baggage, gathered in one place, and as they had no time to set up camp, lined up for battle. They had 2 legions. The fight was most intense in the center, and when the enemy saw this, it could not be broken, formed a wedge of formation. Gaius Calpurnius made a short detour with the cavalry and attacked the flank of the wedge. The allied cavalry attacked the other flank. The praetor rode so deep in its enemy ranks that it was difficult to distinguish which side he belonged to. His courage fired up both the cavalry and the infantry. The enemy was broken. The cavalry pursued the fugitives, and the battle with the guard of the enemy camp started. The cavalry had dismounted, and the fight on foot. The reserve infantry was called in to help. Only a few thousand out of a force of 35,000 escaped. The Romans lost 600 of their men and 150 auxiliaries. In 184 BC, the praetor Aulus Trementus Vero and Publius Servitus Longo were assigned to Hispania Praetor and Ulterior respectively. Hispania Ulterior was quiet during the tenure of Longus due to the successful campaign in the previous year. However, during the second year, he was incapacitated by illness and died. In Hispania Praetor, Vero seized the Sistania town of Corbio, north of the river Ebro, and sold the prisoners. The province remained quiet in the winter. In 183 BC, the 2 provinces in Hispania were reserved for the current praetors. In that year, Aulus Trentius took on the successful actions against the Celtibrines near the Ebro in Austrian country. He took by storm several places the Celtibrines had fortified. Hispania Ulterior was quiet due to the long illness of Publius Sempronius. In 182 BC, the praetors Publius Manilius, who had been Cato's second in command in 195 BC, and Quintus Fulvus Facius were assigned Hispania Ulterior and Praetor respectively. In Rome, it was known that Hispania Praetor there was a war. The Celtibrines and the army in Hispania Ulterior had lost military discipline due to idleness caused by the long illness of Publius Sempronius. The reinforcements for the 2 provinces were sent: 4,000 Roman and 7,000 allied infantry, and 200 Roman and 300 allied cavalries. Aulus Trentus sent news that Publius Sempronius had died after more than a year's illness. The new praetors were ordered to leave as soon as possible. The Celtibrines attacked Fulvius Facilis and besieged the town of Ubrica. The Romans suffered casualties in several hard battles. The praetors were preserved. The Celtibrines, exhausted by many battles, withdrew, and the town fell a few days later. He then went to a winter camp. Publius Manilius did the same, having done, according to Livy, nothing worth mentioning.